Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted the number 1 would be Lisa Frankenstein, number 2 would be Anyone But You, number 3 would be Argyle, number 4 would be The Chosen, Season 4, Episodes 1 through 3, and number 5 would be The Beekeeper. And believe it or not, despite it being a really slow weekend, I think it said it went down as like one of the slowest ever in like Super Bowl weekend history, I got a complete goose egg on this one. 0 out of 5 of my predictions right for this weekend. As it turns out, Lisa Frankenstein didn't do as well as I thought. The Chosen wasn't going to have staying power, and Anyone But You, it's still doing good, but it didn't have that kind of resurgence kind of energy with the encore re-release that they were promoting. So unfortunately, nobody got their predictions right this weekend. So let's just dive on into what happened, because yeah, a lot of low numbers here. Luckily, though, none dipped into like the 100,000s, though, like we've seen happen before, despite it being a really low grossing weekend. But let's go over what happened. Number 1 was actually, once again, Argyle. Now, this does come with at least a little over a 60% drop from last weekend, but it's still number 1 at the box office, so King Matthew Vaughn, you know? It made $6 million this weekend, which now adds to a domestic total of $28 million. It has not outgrossed the King's Man's domestic run yet. It still needs $9 million to do so. Worldwide, it only adds up to $59 million, so it's $38 million still behind Kick-Ass. We're still not even completely sure what the actual production budget of this thing would be, other than the $200 million that Apple spent to acquire the film, which isn't technically the budget. Either way, I'm sure they need a lot of money to at least make back a lot of their investment. So this is the fact that they are not in the 100 millions yet worldwide, at least, is pretty troubling. I do wonder how many more. I know Apple, what we've kind of talked about is Apple just wants movies for their streaming service, so them putting some of their films in theaters so far is just kind of like the cherry on top, maybe get some awards consideration in the case of Napoleon, or more importantly, Killers of the Flower Moon. Argyle is more likely their attempt of we can also get a bigger blockbuster out in the theaters and then have it exclusively on our streaming service, you know? And I do wonder, since all three of them that I have just mentioned at least haven't really turned a profit in theaters, it does make it, and I've already kind of talked about for Napoleon and Killers of the Flower Moon at the very least, why it doesn't really matter, you know, how much they made or if they doubled their budgets, and I guess you could also say the same about Argyle, but it does make you wonder how much longer are they just going to dump unlimited amounts of money on these projects, you know? Either way, Argyle is still not doing well. Number 2 is Lisa Frankenstein. I was kind of hoping that this would squeak up above Argyle, but it's a decent movie. I can definitely see this movie not clicking with everybody, though, and I think maybe that was the word of mouth amongst the people who were able to see it, that it's probably not going to be for everybody. Some people have enjoyed it, some people haven't. It's not Jennifer's Body again, because this movie is kind of split down the middle as far as people's reactions to it. It's kind of across the board, but it's not the same kind of thing, so I would recommend it if you want to give it a shot, but, you know, at the end of the day, you know what you're going to be able to tolerate in a movie. It made $3.8 million this weekend. This is on a budget of $13 million, so relatively low. Maybe if they had a stronger marketing push of getting the word out there about this movie and getting the people involved out there talking to the press and being out there with fans or whatever, maybe they could have had a stronger run here, a stronger opening, but oh well, you know, this is Zelda Williams' directorial debut, so there's not really a lot to compare as far as other box office runs, so we're just going to jump right into Diablo Cody's filmography. Where's this kind of rank? For the opening weekends, it's kind of smack dab in the middle, and it doesn't help that some of these films opened up kind of in limited release, and then a couple weeks later they had their, wide release openings, but technically they're opening was limited. So let's just talk about this right now. It had an opening weekend $3 million over Paradise, which is a film she wrote and directed. There's no financial information about this film on thenumbers.com, by the way, which is interesting. Anyways, but it also had a $3 million opening over Juno and Young Adult as well. 600,000 over Tully. If you remember that one from a couple years ago. So, it's kind of smack dab in the middle because it's then below Ricky and the Flash and Jennifer's Body by $3 million. So it's, as far as Diablo Cody goes, it's kind of right on point. The thing is, though, is that Juno and young adult, but more so Juno, that kind of had a great big run, a great word of mouth spread about that movie. So when it was able to expand to other theaters, more people kept seeing it, you know? The numbers went up instead of just, it made a couple 100,000, you know? Then it made 10 million on its like fourth or, you know, fifth weekend when it finally went wide. So yeah, it's, it's still not great. And none of this really, you know, adds up to like, is it doing well? Is it going to do well? No, I don't think so. I don't think this is going to hold over that well, unfortunately. So it's kind of a big bummer. It did outgross for Diablo Cody Paradise though by 3 million, so now it sits behind Tully by 6 million. Maybe it'll be able to make that much, and then it's not the lowest grossing Diablo Cody movie. But either way, if I can get any point across here, is that I hope you give it a chance. If you want to go see something, why would you go see Madam Web when you can give something like Lisa Frankenstein a shot? You know, maybe you don't like it. You know, maybe you do really love it. You know, don't know what your reaction is, but I feel like a lot of us can correctly guess how we're going to feel about Madam Web just based off of Sony's other Marvel outputs, you know, the villain outputs, you know, in recent years. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Number 3 is The Beekeeper, making 3.3 million, adding to a domestic total of 54 million. Still not sure what the budget of this thing is, but I'm going to assume it's still doing well. It's still behind Fury by 31 million worldwide. It is sitting at 114 million, so it's 96 million behind Fury. Like I said, I can't imagine, you know, that it hasn't doubled its budget yet, because it's a big action movie, and it's got Jason Statham and David Ayer's the director, but there's no way that it costs the same as like John Wick 4 last year. You know what I mean? Like the first John Wick doesn't even cost how much John Wick 4 does. Like if this can cost maybe a little bit over the first John Wick, then I think we're in good shape. I just wish that I could find like a certified like budget, you know, like this is definitively what it is, how much it cost. And I haven't really had that. So I feel like I've seen some people go like, oh, like maybe 30 or 40 million, but nothing definitive. So I'm just going to assume that it's good. Number 4, we have Wonka sneaking back up here, making 3.06 million, adding to a domestic total of 205. It is now 1 million behind the Johnny Depp Wonka film. Next weekend for sure, it has to happen. Good on you, Timothy. Get past Johnny Depp. Worldwide, it is sitting at $587 million, so 13 million away from getting to 600 million worldwide. But like I said, the more important thing is outgrossing the Johnny Depp one domestically, finally. Number 5 is Migration, coming back in here, making 3.02 million, adding to a domestic total of 110 million. It has finally, domestically, outgrossed Hop by $2 million, and now sits behind The Secret Life of Pets 2 by 49 million. So it's not going to start outgrossing everything, but it did finally outgross Hop, the Illumination's lowest grossing film prior. So huzzah! Worldwide, it is sitting at 235 million, which is sitting behind The Lorax by 116 million. So Migration's still, you know, plugging away at it. And then we get to number 6, which is The Chosen, season 4, episodes 1 through 3. The one that I thought maybe would have a little bit of a better hold because, you know, going into this weekend, it's going to be slow. But, you know, I guess more people are interested in Wonka or Migration. Or just, you know, the amount of people that would go see The Chosen now just is not the same as the people who are now catching on to Migration or Wonka. Anyways, it made 2.7 million this weekend, which adds to a domestic total of 12.2 million. Cool. Number 7 is Anyone But You. But that's the thing. When I was making my prediction last weekend, with the Encore re-release, it'll probably get a bigger boost, and it didn't get into the top 5, but it didn't really dip from where it was last week. I think last weekend it was in this exact same spot, and it didn't budge, which, you know, that's still pretty solid, you know? It made 2.6 million this weekend, which now adds to a domestic total of $80 million for director Will Gluck. That is 5 million away from outgrossing Annie. Worldwide, it is sitting at $170 million, so it is 176 million away from outgrossing Peter Rabbit, the first Peter Rabbit for Will Gluck. Not sure if it will get there, but, I mean, it's sitting at 170 million. It is getting closer and closer to 200 million worldwide, and I'm not sure if it will get there at this point, but the fact that it is going to get so close on a budget of 25 million, and it's a rom-com, which has kind of been regulated as the streaming kind of movie, you know, that's something to celebrate. The thing about, like, Ticket to Paradise in 2022, just a year before Anyone But You, you know, it did pretty well, and if I'm doing my math right, if I'm remembering correctly, it kind of ended its worldwide run around where Anyone But You could end up being, but the budget was higher for that one. Like, they kind of just squeaked by the doubling point on that one. But Anyone But You, because it's so low, but the movie itself, it doesn't feel like it suffers from that. It's like, yeah, like they're getting so much back on it now because because they didn't pump so much that maybe they didn't even need added to the budget in the first place. But, you know, who am I to speculate? It's probably just because it's George Clooney and Julia Roberts, and they're bigger movie stars, so you got to pay them more. And Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney, even though they are on the rise, they're not George Clooney and Julia Roberts, so maybe that's the budget difference. I don't want to speculate. Let's move on to number 8, which is Mean Girls, making $1.9 million, adding to a domestic total of $69 million. It is $17 million away from the original film, and then worldwide, now that it's at $97 million, it is $33 million away from the original. But if they get $3 million more, they cross the $100 million point, which I think maybe they'll look back on as like, that's more rewarding than simply outgrossing the original film. Of course, we can never do that. Once they get to $108 million, if they, you know, last long enough to get there, they triple their $36 million budget. So the fact that they're getting close to that is probably what they're more excited for. At number 9, we have Dune, the 2021 film. It's been re-released, in case you didn't know. I think it has like an exclusive preview for Dune 2, so if you do go see that, you'll get some kind of footage or featurette or something like that. Either way, it was a slow enough weekend and it was a strong enough re-release. It got into the top 10. It made $1.6 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $109 million. Worldwide bumps it up to $391 million. So it has already doubled its $165 million back when it kind of came out. It's 61 million over that doubling point, so, you know, good on them for just adding more to it. Obviously, this movie was affected by not just being released in 2021, which was people still getting kind of adjusted to going back to the theater after, you know, masking up and getting vaccinated, stuff like that, but it was also dealing with being released on HBO Max at the same exact time. So it was like, yeah, you know, but the fact that it made that much money in its original release, you know, and it was on streaming, it kind of speaks to the audience craving for a cinema experience, and the fact that people were like, you can't just watch Dune at home. People did, obviously, but you can't just watch it at home. You have to go to the theater to see it. You got to see it on the biggest screen you can find. And I feel like now, since Dune Part 2 is coming out, and there's much more hype around this one, and the fact that it's not going to be on HBO Max as soon as it releases in theaters, and just it's been a couple years and the hype has grown, and they already have the cast doing press, and they even ask him about that goddamn popcorn bucket and shit like that. I think Dune 2 could end up being even bigger than this one. And I think low bar, of course, because the first one is technically a COVID, coming out of COVID release, but still, like, I think the point still stands because Dune is just such a good movie. To have people just discover it and share it, like, you know, it was really great and you got to see it in theaters, Dune, and then have that kind of fandom grow. So when Dune 2 comes out and it's the same thing, you know, it's going to be the follow up to that technical marvel, and we want to see more of that in cinema, you know? I don't know. Does that make sense? Fuck it. Let's close out the video with number 10, American Fiction, making $1.2 million, adding to a domestic total of $17.3 million. We do have a little bit of an update on the budget we didn't know for a while. According to Wikipedia, it says the budget was less than $10 million. So at the most, it was about 10 million, pretty much. It wasn't over that, as far as what Wikipedia tells me. Worldwide, we have a little bit of a boost here, sitting at 18.3 million, so it either already has doubled a budget, or if it's at kind of its maximum of, like, not over 10 million, it only needs a couple 100,000 more until it gets there. So either way, you can say that this is a, you know, kind of moderate hit, and especially with the award season going on. This movie and Poor Things were kind of the ones that, as far as like post-Oscar nominations, kind of got a bit more play in the theater. I mean, everything else had kind of already been out, and there's only like special times to go see them in the theaters. Like, you can only see it at this specific time, but it's out there, so you can see it before the Oscars, or it's on streaming or whatever the fuck. But American Fiction, I think American Fiction and Poor Things benefited from their kind of release strategy. So good on them. Now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, I'm going with Madam Web. Number 2, Bob Marley, One Love. Number 3, Argyle. Number 4, Lisa Frankenstein. And number 5, The Beekeeper. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.